All right, on this video, we're going to talk about how to make more music, but more importantly, why you should make more music and more visuals. Don't you go nowhere.
I don't need nothing else. Every time I'm with you, yo, it's something else. It's a fact, and it's nothing else. Got your hand out, you don't even need a help. Ooh, I don't need nothing else. Every time I'm with you, yo, it's something else. It's a fact, and it's nothing else. Got your hand out, you don't even need a help. Ooh, that's right. I don't need nothing else. That's right.
What's going on? It's Ruslan with KingsDreamENT.com. This channel exists to encourage, empower, inspire you to live God's dream for your life. I run a boutique label called KingsDreamENT.com. I'm a full-time recording artist based in beautiful San Diego, California. Recently, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw my friend Wendy Day with the Rap Coalition post this article, Music Consumption, Music Creation, and how it's being impacted by this world pandemic that many of us are going through, but how it'll impact us beyond that. How is this lockdown impacting independent and mainstream artists? Well, if you're signed to a major label, it says that moreover, with recording studios closed, projects getting put on hold, releases pushed back, not enough music is getting to market when it is needed the most. This disruption to music supply chain is not going away, and independent artists are beginning to look like they could be best placed to respond. If you are signed to a major label, if you're in that system, I call that the music industry. I'm in the business of making music. I don't really care for the music industry, but if you're signed to that label, there is a way that they do music. There's a way they create music, usually in bigger, more expensive studios with multiple engineers, mixing engineers, producers, you know, the manager of all the engineers in the studio. There's a system there that right now is shut down. You can't go to the studio. Studios are shut down. I got buddies like my man Ayman, who runs his own studio, probably the dopest studio in San Diego, and it's shut down. Okay, so studios are shut down because of the lockdown. So what does that mean? Well, that means that music getting made at major labels isn't getting made because the studios are shut down. The article goes on to say that in 2019, consumption of music from independent labels, independent artists went up, and a bunch of good stuff like that, right? So even though music streaming and consumption is technically down in the middle of the lockdown because people aren't driving anywhere, they're not going to the gym, right? There's less times to consume music. Independent music as of last year is on the rise, and a lot of the people on the major labels, especially genres outside of hip hop, aren't able to create music at scale. This presents an opportunity for us independent artists if we can create more music and more visuals while the major label machine is being slowed down. I'm gonna give you guys some practical tips on how to create more music, how to create more visuals. But before we do that, I have to give you guys a recap of this past Fan Love Friday music submission. All right, first artist I wanna highlight from this Fan Love Friday is the homie 350.
I was outside, I saw them. I was like, man, no problem. You was like, man, no problem. Yeah. I don't want to make no problem. Why do I say I got them? That's how I face it. A lot like dudes living life like Southside fight night. Just might hide my chains out of sight. My face
Next person I want to highlight is the homie Robbie.
Sunshine opportune come bad weather. Sunshine opportune comes. Bad weather. Levitate on the wings of Jehovah. Meditate before the darkness takes over.
And last but not least, the homie Bartholomew Jones.
We ain't gotta get out to get on today. I ain't gotta get up, still in the J, still in the whip, still in the rape, still in the mood to get out today. We ain't gotta get no gas now. I ain't even really tryna pass town. I just wanna really feel the wind blow when the sun sets on your melody like wow. I think
all right, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, every Friday we do Fan Love Friday where I review music live on my YouTube channel. For the most talented community in the internet, the Patreon community, and you could be a part of it if you'd like. It's only $10 a month. Link in the description to go sign up. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Bad news, music consumption is down. Bad news, major recording studios are closed. This isn't good for the overall music supply chain of major labels, major corporations. Good news is it creates an opportunity for those of us who are independent, that are recording at home, that don't need a bajillion engineers and producers and A&Rs to get music to the marketplace. And if you study the guys that are really blowing up organically, everybody from a Russ to a Toby Wigway, to guys like Nick D, who's a part of our Patreon community, even a Joey Vantes, who I have a new single with, guys that are self-made, independently growing their platforms at a rapid rate, making good money. The unique thing that you will find about just about every single one of them is that there is a high amount of music being released, and there's a high amount of visuals being released, and they are deliberate in how they release this music. So, what are some practical tips? The biggest mistake many artists and creatives make is they approach their art like it's this blank canvas and they're just searching for inspiration, and when the inspiration hits, then they will create something. And unfortunately, music and art is way more of a craft and way more of a skill. It's muscle memory, and it's less about how you feel and what you're into in the moment, and more about executing and creating consistently. In the book Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hour rule. Putting in 10,000 deliberate hours into a craft can make you an expert or very, very proficient at just about anything. So first and foremost, you have to be willing to put in the hours, preferably daily. How 10,000 hours breaks down: 3 hours a day over the course of 10 years gets you to approximately 10,000 hours. That's a lot of hours. So you gotta be willing to put in the hours daily, deliberate, focused hours. And how do you do that? Well, the biggest and most important idea that I want you guys to get in this video is you have to get yourself in a flow state. What is the flow state? I'll show you a chart. Thought you'd never ask. This is where you start doing something and you lose all track of time, where something is difficult, but it's not too difficult, and boredom, where it's so easy that you just check out and you go do something else. The flow state is when you lock into that zone, and time and everything just goes away, and you can just stay focused, locked in on creating, right? When you're making music, it feels like you've only been sitting down for a few minutes, and you look up and it's been hours. That's the flow state. Now, the tricky thing about the flow state is it can't be so hard for you that if you don't know your software, if you don't know how to use a microphone, if you don't know how to rap, if you don't know how to count your bars, if you don't know how to do all this stuff, you're gonna get frustrated. There's gonna be too much anxiety. You're gonna grow in frustration. Okay. What do I mean about frustration? Yesterday, I couldn't find the flow state. I was trying to do something non-music related. I was trying to figure out how to get my Facebook and my Squarespace store to sync up so that I can get Instagram shopping on my Instagram or on the King's Dream Instagram. And it's just very frustrating, a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration, extremely draining for me to go through that. And guess what? I'm now really trying to get back into it. I made a couple phone calls. I'm trying to get some help on it. It's just not helpful for me to keep spinning my wheels doing something that I'm not good at, because I haven't put in the hours to understand how all that stuff works. So if you haven't put in the hours, if you haven't learned your software, if you haven't learned how to rap, how to make music, how to record, if you haven't learned, it's probably gonna be too hard for you. You're gonna be anxious. You're gonna be spending way more time troubleshooting and trying to educate yourself on how to use everything than you are actually creating. So this is kind of for more intermediate artists that know how to record themselves, know how to punch, know how to use the software, know how to do some rough mixes. Get in the flow state. It's going to be the most important thing, especially as you transition into videos, right? Now, how do you get yourself in a flow state? Well, you get yourself in a flow state by approaching your art in a systematic way, in a way that has a system. Every single approach to it is a system. When I'm working on music, I have a template. I use Reason 11 if you guys didn't know. And when I pull it up, every session basically starts the same way. Why? Because I need that familiarity. I need that consistency so I can get out of my head and get out of anything else that I'm thinking about besides getting to the creative part. So here's my Reason sequencer, okay? If you look here, I'll zoom in. I have my drums preloaded. All my drum sounds are preloaded. If I'm using a beat, I'm doing a feature for somebody, I have an aux channel that already has a beat. I have my kick, snare, stems. If I'm making a beat, I have my sample. I'm a sample-based producer. I even have a bass sound, and down here I have my vocals, and everything is neatly routed to my mixer with some presets, some EQs, some different settings already on here that gets me to creating as quickly as possible. Another thing that I don't do is I try not to listen too much to the beat beforehand. I'll tend to overthink. I just try to put the headphones on, and as soon as I got the idea, I go right to recording. I don't even write my raps down. It feels like there's a disconnect between writing, then reading, then internalizing, then saying, versus just thinking and saying. That's my approach. It's the same approach of the Lil Waynes, the Jay-Z's, the Notorious B.I.G.'s. A lot of rappers in this era don't write their rhymes anymore. They just go straight for it. So that's my system. I've created a system that allows me to create as much as I can. I'm also in the process of creating a similar system for music videos. We're trying to create a system for how can we approach every video the same way and have a system to creating the videos and editing them as quickly as possible so that we're not sitting around on them. I don't listen to the beat too often, and if I listen too much, I'll get stuck. It'll just become too stale. If I shot a music video and I sit on it too often, the longer I sit on it, the harder it is for me to release it and to finish it. Another little trick as I show you guys is creating breaks so that you can stand up, move around. Motion creates emotion, right? So I use the Pomodoro method where every 25 minutes, I usually take a break. And I got a little clock here that when I start recording, I literally just go in here, it's right here. I hit start, right? And 25 minutes later, the clock will go off and I will get a 5-minute break, really just to stretch, move around, get some blood flowing. Sometimes I'll stand up while I'm recording. I'm trying to create a system for myself so that whatever I'm doing doesn't become stale, so that I can lock into the flow state. If I'm locked into the flow state, I will create more music. If I create more music, the objective is to finish the music. If I'm finishing the music, then I'm releasing more music. If I'm releasing more music, I get more shots at bat to get featured on a playlist, to get my music in front of my audience, to grow my audience. Ultimately, that's what I'm hoping to do, is to get my streams up. The big idea in all this, the big idea is if you want to create more music, you have to create systems to get yourself in the flow state. Once you're in a flow state, you will lock in. To get in the flow state, you actually have to be proficient at making music, learning your DAW, all these other things that go along in it. So those things don't feel like they're getting in the way. Those things are just accommodating you to get to your finished product faster. And the last one is you actually got to finish the songs. And a quick tip for that is sometimes it's not great to sit down and try to finish an entire song in one setting, because a lot of times the hook may come out kind of whack. If that's your last part that you contributed, the verse might not come out as strong the last couple bars. So one of the things I do is I don't try and finish a song in one setting. I'll go in, I'll set a 25-minute timer, and I'll just focus on finishing the verse. If the verse gets done in 25 minutes, great. If it doesn't, I'll lock in, I'll do another 25 minutes, right? If I'm feeling it, I'm really locked in, maybe I'll go on to a second verse. And then usually I'll come back on a different day with fresh ears to finish that second verse or to write a hook or whatever. I found that when you could focus on one thing at a time, I'm just gonna write the very best verse I can. I'm just gonna make the very best beat I can. I'm just gonna write the very best hook I can. That oftentimes that is where you get your best work from, is just doing one thing at a time. So in closing, how do you create more music? You create more music by creating systems for your workflow. And remembering that music is not this romanticized, hyper emotional thing. Music is just like any other skill, and it requires muscle memory, and it requires a lot of hours and a lot of focus to get good at. So what do you guys think? Have you implemented any of these things? I want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. I think we'll get a wide spectrum of people in here that probably only create when they quote unquote feel inspired, and people who are really on it and really create consistently, even if they don't feel like it. That's where I want to get all you guys to. If you're always creating, you will always have music to release. If you're always releasing music, you will, and you should, if the music is good, see growth with your music. Appreciate y'all. Peace.